Okay, preparing your PCB, preparing it to be soldered. First of all, you need your PCB with holes drilled in it. You'll need a pair of long nose pliers and a pair of side cutters, and if you haven't cleaned your PCB up, you'll need some wire wool. I'm assuming that you've cleaned your PCB up by rubbing the wire wool over the copper track, so we'll move on from that position. You'll notice that around your PCB there's a copper border. What you do need to do is break this copper border. Whatever PCB you've got, you need to break that copper border, because if it touches where it shouldn't touch, when you power it up, it will short, it will cause a short circuit and you won't be able to work your PCB at all. It won't work. Okay, now we've got that far. We now need to get our components, which is a switch and the 1 ohm resistor, and check that it's a 1 ohm resistor by looking at the bands. You'll see on other tutorials how to work out the resistance. You'll need your LED. It's a bright light LED, so hopefully once your torch is soldered up, it will be really bright. It will be like a nice bright torch. And you'll need some single core wire. If you're not sure what the difference between single core and multi-strand is, or multi-core, then ask your teacher and they'll be able to tell you. Preparing your PCB. First off, we need to make sure that it fits in its case without having to break the plastic or scrape the plastic down in any way. This is the top part of your case, and this is where the PCB will sit, in here, and the LED coming out of here. So first of all, we need to make sure the PCB is going to sit in there quite comfortably. Now we can just line it up like that and know that it sits in, and this here, where the LED legs are going to come out, goes in there comfortably, but we don't know that the switch is going to line up. So the first thing you should do really is get your switch and just squeeze the legs to straighten out the bends. So just squeeze the legs to straighten out the bends. Now there is only one way that this switch can go in. This is your component side, this is the track side. So the component side, the switch goes into those 4 holes. Component side, you might need to wiggle it about a little bit to make it fit, but it should just fit in quite nicely like so. Okay, there it is sitting on the component side, and if you look closely you can see the pins coming through on the track side. Now once that's in, you can see here that the LED needs to come out here. So what we'll do is we'll put the switch in the hole there, which is where it's coming through your torch. That'll be quite nice. And then we'll place this one on top just to make sure that the LED holes are still in line with the gap, and that all of the edges and the holes here line up with each other. You might need to trim off the top of the PCB or the sides of the PCB, or just use a bit of glass paper to clean them down. This one we don't have to. Okay, so we're ready to go. We don't need to take out the switch there because that's already in place. That's quite nice. What I will do is rest this on here just to show you so it's easier to see. That's already in place. Get a sponge, make it wet, ready to clean your soldering iron when you start use. So you clean the soldering iron like so. Okay. Get yourself some solder. Like so, it's solder. And now all we need to do is solder is switch to the board. Because the board's clean, it shouldn't take long. So we heat up the track, touching the track and the pin together, and then a few seconds, push the solder on. Okay, I'll show you again. Touch the track and the pin with the soldering iron, and then from the other side, push the solder in to the pin. Now, if you look closely here, I've created a dry joint. See the hole in the solder? That's called a dry joint. That's a good joint. That's a dry joint. We don't want that. Your circuit won't work with a dry joint, so we'll just heat it again. Just touch it. You might not even need more solder, just heating up the solder that's on there might work. Okay, so heat the track and the pin, push the solder, take the solder away, and then the soldering iron. Track, pin, solder, take the soldering iron, take the solder away, and then the soldering iron. And you'll see that each section there, let's straighten that up, each piece of solder that we've done is a nice pyramid, sort of like, there's the pin coming through the board, there's your component that side of the board, there's the pin, and your solder goes up like that and down like that, and that is a good joint. If for argument's sake you've got the solder going up like that and nothing this side, then that's a dry joint. We don't want dry joints. Okay, the next thing we need to do is the LED. If you look closely on the track side, you've got a positive and a negative. Now you want the positive leg of the LED, which is the long leg here, and the negative leg is the short leg. So be careful, especially when you turn it over to the component side. Push them through, making sure that when they're the other side you've still got the long leg at the positive and the short leg at the negative. Now we're going to bend this over just so it's just off the board, so it sits like that. Now we'll go back to soldering, clean it, good. Turn this around so that we can rest on the track, so it's on the track and on the pin, and then push against, and that should sit on the track quite nicely. And then again turn it round just to make it a bit easier. On your solder stations you've got a clip that you can clip this into, which will hold it quite neatly. So there we go, and it only takes a few seconds. You don't want to have the soldering iron on there any longer than about 5 seconds, because you will melt the adhesive that holds the track down onto the board. What you would like to, perhaps you would like to do, is find out why the adhesive melts so quick on the board that holds the track. Your teacher will be able to show you that and explain that to you. Here's the next component that we're going to use, but before we use that we're going to trim these legs off. So we'll pick that up and just using our side cutters we'll trim quite nice and close, let it fall on the table or the floor. There's the component side, there's your track side. Next thing we use is the resistor. Now the resistor is to slow down the flow of the current, and the resistor goes in here between these 2 points. The resistor is there to slow down the current so that we don't blow the LED. Push that through. You might need to use the long nose pliers just to pull that so it's flat to the board. Now also what you might like to do is tape that so it doesn't sit too far away from the board when you solder, so it doesn't fall through. I've been doing this a few years now, so I'm not going to tape it. I'm just going to go for it. Let's see what happens. Soldering iron, clean the soldering iron. Rest the soldering iron on the track and against the pin. A few seconds. Push the solder. Let go. Again. Track and the pin. Push the solder. And then let go. This area here you've got to be really careful here, because there's still a hole there that we need to put something in, and a hole there that we need to put something in as well. So don't let this solder here go over that hole. That's good. Once you've done that, check that the resistor is nice and flat to the board, and trim off the excess pieces of wire. That's good. Get yourself a piece of single core wire. Now it can be black or red, it doesn't really matter, and strip the wire sheathing off so you can just see the wire. Okay, let's strip a bit more off of that. You have got wire strippers, you don't need to use these cutters. Okay, we've got that. Now what I would suggest is that you fold it up like this and push it through from the component side. This is what we're going to attach the batteries to inside your torch case. So we've got it through like that, and fold it down so it's not going to go anywhere. So you've got that. Now clean your soldering iron. Okay. Pick up your solder. Let's turn this around so that we can see it. Touching the copper and the pin, and then just a little bit of solder onto there, like so. Good. And touching the copper and the pin, and a little bit of solder on there, like so. Good. Clean the soldering iron up and put it away. Now be careful, because this wire might be hot depending how long you've kept the solder on there for. Soldering iron. And then trim it off, pull it out, and then cut it in the middle like so. So you've got two separate wires. Now you can either use a screwdriver or your pencil, and we're just going to roll that up so we can make a contact on top of the battery. Roll it up again, hold it against it and roll it up, so, and then take that out, so we can make a contact on the other battery. Now that's your soldering done. Looks good. It fits in there quite nicely. Yeah, it will fit in there quite nicely, and then this one will fit over there quite nicely. But what you do need to do is have a look at the tutorial now that says assembly, LED torch assembly.